Welcome to the Astrology Show with your host, Kelly Fox. Each week, Kelly will give you access to the current transits that are a valuable tool which provide astrological information to help unlock the potential each of us has through our sun sign. Understanding the current planetary influences each week can help steer us in the right direction to make better informed choices. Sometimes, events in your life may seem completely random, but there is a pattern to the order of these events, one set in motion in part by you, and in part by the planets and stars in the sky and their influence on your life here on Earth. So if you're wondering what's going to happen in your week ahead, if you're going to get that promotion, move to a new city, or fall in love, tune in to the Astrology Show for guidance. It can help you anticipate problems before they occur, give you tools to cope with changes, and help you look forward to the wonderful days ahead. Kelly Fox is a professional astrologer and internet pioneer who launched astrology.com, one of the first and most successful astrology websites. Today, her passion lies with her new site, theastrologer.com, where she brings a modern-day approach to an ancient wisdom. Please join Kelly each week to learn more about how the planets can align for you.
Hi there, and welcome to the Astrology Show. I'm your host and astrologer, Kelly Fox. How are you doing? Getting ready for the full moon. The full moon happens tomorrow. And that's actually the only really planetary aspect of the week, which is sort of strange. If you tune in each week to the show, you'll know that there's always something going on. And this full moon is really more than just a full moon. There are so many other aspects hooking into this full moon, and I'm going to break those down throughout the show and explain more of what's happening this week. But this is definitely a full moon to remember, and not necessarily in a bad way. How's that for a change? And, of course, next week, on next week's show, I will be talking all about the Mercury retrograde. Yes, folks, we have a Mercury retrograde once again. It's sort of like we just recovered from the previous Mercury retrograde, which we had in September. Mercury retrograde. Mercury was retrograde in September in Virgo. So now we have another one coming right up next Monday, the 19th. And that will be the same day that Mars moves into Pisces as well. And the Mercury retrograde, I think, will mark the start of a season of, I'm trying to think of a nice word for it, but I can't quite think. What's another polite, non-scary word for challenging or challenges? Right on the holiday period, and then through January 12th when we have a major full moon. This full moon is definitely tame by comparison of next month's full moon. I don't want to alarm you, of course, but next month's full moon is part of a cardinal cross or a grand square. This full moon that we're having tomorrow, it is in Gemini, and it's part of a grand air trine. Oh, and I will explain what a grand air trine is a bit later on in the show, but just know that it's a relief. It's actually a relief. It's a great thing. And this is the time with this grand air trine full moon for communication, for any sort of intellectual pursuits. This is a really great week for thinking clearly, speaking clearly, and getting your point across. So I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to break down the full moon of the week, the Gemini full moon, and all its components. And there are a lot of aspects hooking into this full moon, so I'll explain that as well. But taking a step back, what is a full moon? Well, a full moon is always visible up there in the sky, and it's pretty hard to miss. The full moon is a big white circle, big round luminary shining brightly, adding a blue tinged light upon the Earth's nighttime landscape. And you may feel a slightly unusual vibe in the air if you're a sensitive type, an intuitive type. If you're a Cancer, born under the sign of Cancer, the moon rules Cancer. There might be a bit of an edge, usually around a full moon, maybe some excitement, lots going on, never a dull moment. And, of course, it will all depend on where the full moon sits in your astrology chart, sits in your birth chart, and what it triggers. Each full moon you might have noticed, sometimes you might even notice a full moon, other times it's so obvious it's a full moon. It just depends how that affects you and your birth chart. And a birth chart, place to get a birth chart is on my website, and that's theastrologer.com. And you look in the menu bar, I'll have reports or chart wheel, select that, and you can learn more about yourself through your birth chart and what I talk about each week on the show. Once you know where your planets are, not just your sun sign, but all the other planets, where they are in your chart, then you can relate a bit more to the information that I give each week in the show. So back to the full moon, there's so many myths around the effects of a full moon. I automatically think, not me as an astrologer, but when I think of the myths around a full moon, the werewolf howling at the moon, and maybe next full moon, there'll be too much to say in January. Maybe one of these full moons coming up, I might do some research on where did the myth come from with the werewolf and the full moon. That'd be sort of interesting. So we know that during full moons that the ocean tides rise higher, and that's because the moon controls the water on the Earth and the gravitational pull. Also, some people do behave oddly. And why is that so, that they behave oddly? Well, maybe it's because our bodies are comprised of about 83% water. And the moon, because it controls the water on the Earth, that makes sense. So maybe there is something to it when people are howling at the moon or behaving strangely. It also is technically the Earth, the Earth sits between the sun and the moon. So there's a bit of a tug of war going on with a full moon. And we say that during a full moon that people's behavior reflects our own behavior. It's like people are mirroring our characteristics and our behaviors during a full moon. So that's really interesting. Pay attention to the people around you and how they're behaving. Do you feel really connected to others? They're very kind and caring and compassionate. Or are people a bit confrontational? So pay attention to what's going on with the energy of the full moon. Sometimes during full moons, we can have restless sleeps, tossing and turning throughout the night. Pay attention to your dreams, particularly because this full moon is going to be in Gemini, and Gemini is very intellectual. It's an air sign, very intellectual sign. Not only will be more eloquent and articulate because of the Gemini full moon, we might be very busy. There'll be lots and lots of things to do. Of course, during this holiday season, there's always lots of things to do. But maybe more so at this time than others. And because the moon's in Gemini opposing a Sagittarius sun, this will be a time of, do we pay attention to the big picture or do we focus on the detail? So there might be many of us trying to find a balance between those two things. More so if you're a Virgo and a Pisces, this might be a time to really focus on finding the balance between big picture stuff and details. There might be a lot of nervous energy at this time, particularly for Virgo. So it's important to pay attention to your health and take care of your own needs. If you're a Pisces, Pisces tend to take care of everyone else's needs. But this is very important to look after yourself at this time. So the moon can trigger our intuition. And during this full moon with lots of other energy tied into it, realizations may hit us during the quiet moments. So even though this is going to be a very busy period with the Gemini full moon, it's important that we find some solitude as much as we can, pay attention to our thoughts, channeling, and it's also a great time during a full moon for manifestation. So be sure to put your intentions out there, and it's definitely a great time for manifestation. And of course, also another myth of the full moon. I say a myth, but that sounds so jaded. Strolling, this is my another visualization of a full moon, a couple strolling along the beach, holding hands under the light of the full moon. I'm sure there's songs about that. Again, I should dig that up for another full moon show and get some more myths, research some more myths there around full moons. I know there's plenty. I have heard somewhere along the line, they say more babies are born during a full moon. That doesn't reflect astrologically from the charts that I've seen throughout my career as an astrologer. So another thing. We're going to take a short break, and after the break, we're going to continue with the full moon this week. So stay tuned.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Have you been searching for a perspective beyond the mainstream? Check it out. Join your hosts Cielito Pascual and Diana Gold Holland on Share International Radio for thought-provoking views behind the news, Sundays at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio. You can also find us at shareontheairradio.org. This may be the message of hope you've been waiting for.
Hi, this is John Ondrasik of Five for Fighting, here for RAD, the entertainment industry's voice for road safety. You know, style is a personal thing, and your lifestyle is your business. But if you take it on the road, it becomes everybody's business. So please, plan ahead, designate before you celebrate. Friends, don't let friends drive drunk.
A public service announcement brought to you by RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
Hi there, welcome back to the Astrology Show. I'm your host and astrologer, Kelly Fox, talking about this week's full moon. And it's not just a regular full moon, it is part of what astrologers call a Grand Trine. And I'm getting more detailed and calling it a Grand Air Trine because the full moon is in Gemini, which is an air sign, but it also hooks into Mars and Jupiter, Mars being in Aquarius and Jupiter in Libra. So when you have three or more planets in the same element, then you have what is known as a Grand Trine. And this one, because it's in the air element of Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, we have a Grand Air Trine. So we have a full moon in Gemini, and that is when the moon is in Gemini, the sun is in its opposite sign of Sagittarius, and they are 180 degrees apart, or basically not standing, because they're up in the sky. They are in their orbit. They are sitting opposed, opposite each other, with the Earth in the middle. So that's why we can sometimes feel a push and a pull, the effect of a full moon. So with this full moon in Gemini, Gemini is the sign of the twins. That means anything multiple. So Gemini is typically represented by anything multiple, and Geminis are quite playful, mischievous. They can also have, how do I say this? They can see two sides of a coin quite easily, and they can play either side just for fun. The reason that Geminis are very good at being mischievous is that they are very clever, typically. Clever and witty is a Gemini. If you have any Geminis in your life, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They seem to know a little about a lot. So they're very good conversationalists, typically, and have their finger on the pulse, and pretty up to date with current events or current affairs. And very good at conversation because they're an intellectual air sign. Gemini is a mutable sign, and a mutable sign means that they're flexible and adaptable. And the other mutable signs are Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. So these four signs are very adaptable, easy to change, not fixed or holding on to something. Now, if you have someone in your life who is a Gemini, and that does not sound like them at all, that's probably because they've got more Taurus planets, which outweigh their sun in Gemini. Because I do hear sometimes if you're just taking a sun sign and the characteristics of a sun sign, that doesn't make up a whole person. You know, people comprise of, or the astrology chart comprises of, all the planets in all the signs, but in varying degrees. So you might have somebody who has their sun in Gemini, but they might have the rest of the inner planets, and that's Mercury, Venus, and Mars, maybe in Taurus. So that person would not be as flexible and adaptable as somebody who does not have that influence. So when I speak of characteristics of signs, you think of somebody you know, born under the sign I'm referring to. Just know that there are a whole lot of other components that make up somebody's personality. Now, Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is the planet of communication. Mercury also rules Virgo. So Mercury is the messenger of the gods. The mythology of Mercury is he delivered the messages and information from the gods. So Mercury is referred to as a communication planet, and Gemini is all about communication and the intellect. Now, with this full moon in Gemini happening tomorrow, it's all about discussion, communication, intellect, speech, any way that you can communicate. And the opposite side of Gemini is Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is also, it's not an air sign, it's a fire sign. It's not necessarily labeled as a communicative sign, but what Sagittarius does is it likes to jump into one thing very deeply. So the sign of Sagittarius is also a scholar, and likes to study at a higher level, higher learning. So if you're involved with any sort of study, this is the week to do it. Of course, the kids at school are having their final exams. interesting timing with the full moon in Gemini opposing Sagittarius. It's a perfect time to take exams. People, their minds are clearer. Of course, it helps if you study, but this astrological influence or energy should make studying a lot easier, more fluid and flowing. Comprehension should be higher as well. So back to Gemini and the Gemini full moon of tomorrow. Gemini really connects with people on intellectual levels. If you can hold a conversation with a Gemini and even teach them something interesting that they might not have known before, then you might end up being this person's best friend. And anytime I think of Gemini being the sign of the twins, if there's two Geminis together, and usually they do stick together because they get each other, they understand each other. There's not two people sitting there, but probably four people sitting there. So that's where they get their quick wit and their observations, the reputation of being very smart and funny, witty. Geminis don't miss much, and they have an agile sense of humour and definitely a need for freedom. And that's intellectual, romantic, and otherwise. So the keywords I'm giving you now connect to this Gemini full moon. And if you know of any Geminis, this is their annual full moon. So pay attention to their behaviour. The thing with the Gemini is they get bored very fast. They need constant distraction or entertainment. And I do sometimes think of ADD associated with Gemini. I'm not saying Geminis have ADD. I'm just saying that they're so versatile, multitasking, juggling 5 balls, 10 balls in the air, that I do think of Gemini when I think of that. So Geminis like to intellectualize their feelings. So the full moon in Gemini tomorrow, the moon is all about feelings and emotions, whereas Gemini is more logic. So when you have those two energies coming together, it should be quite interesting. So it would definitely be a time to intellectualize feelings. Also, Geminis are not much for sentimentalism, and deep and gooey emotional bonding is not really for them. Geminis can also be indecisive. That's because they have so many divergent interests and urges. They might not know which one to follow. They sometimes can have a reputation of being wishy-washy, but that's because they can see so many sides to a situation. So they tend to change their mind with zero notice. But they are very exciting people. And they're usually the life of the party, know lots of people. And, of course, if you want to take a road trip, take a Gemini. It's interesting because there's a lot of holiday parties at this time. So it's really interesting timing with the full moon in Gemini, probably lots of social invitations for many of us with the holiday season. So what do we get when we combine the full moon and put it with Gemini? Well, it's interesting because this full moon in Gemini, as I said before, is forming or part of a Grand Trine, a grand air trine with Mars and Jupiter. And Mars is currently in Aquarius and Jupiter in Libra. And the sun in Sagittarius, which is opposite the full moon, it's forming trines to, well, actually the sun's forming a conjunction to Saturn and a trine to Uranus. This is definitely not a time to be sitting home doing nothing. We have a lot of energy with this full moon going on. This is a time for action and adventure. So during this week with this Gemini Full Moon with these other aspects of primarily trines, which is great. A trine is a positive aspect according to astrology. So with the Gemini Full Moon, we might be pleasantly surprised by the progress we are making that we initiated 2 weeks ago during a new moon, the new moon. And the new moon, the date of the new moon was the 29th of November. So if there's something that started about 2 weeks ago for you with the new moon, we might see a milestone this week or something coming about. Also, with this Gemini full moon tomorrow, and there might be a sense of accomplishment that comes about, something that we initiated with the new moon. And now is the time to speak up as well, because people will be listening, busy with their own stuff, but definitely listening, but people will pay attention. Many of us will have a quest for knowledge that can be personally fulfilling once the answers come to us. And we might just get to show off a little bit with our knowledge. And that's particularly so for the air signs, and that's Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, and the fire signs, because Sagittarius is, the sun is in Sagittarius opposing the full moon in Gemini. So the fire signs are also getting a good boost from this full moon, and the fire signs are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. So during this full moon, there's going to be a lot of talk, and I'm just realizing that myself, out yesterday to a place that I regularly go to, and then I noticed it was very loud and lots of loud talking. So just pay attention to that. Many people are in talkative, social mode, full of wit and charm, like a typical Gemini. So what we're going to do now is take a short break, and after the break I will continue with the influences of this week, so stay tuned.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Spiritual, metaphysical, green living, psychic, alternative healing, life coaching. Do any of these or similar terms apply to your business or cause? If so, you are in a niche market with a very specific audience. Conscious Gate PR is the world's leading conscious public relations agency. With a global reach of over 4 million and growing, we offer comprehensive media campaigns to our targeted market. Learn more at consciousgatepr.com. Conscious marketing for conscious minds.
Join Vibe Nation radio host, international psychic medium Carrie Turcotte, as she guides her listeners to rediscover themselves by accessing the keys of knowledge that already exist within. Each week's show is divinely orchestrated to intertwine with the universal energies, allowing the listeners to go deeper within. At the end of each show, Carrie will tap into the energies of the listeners and give a message from Spirit about the upcoming week. If you really want to get to know who you truly are, join Carrie each Monday at 3 p.m. on Vibe Nation Radio.
This is a test to find out if you know it all when it comes to children. Name one of the leading killers of U.S. children age 1 to 13. What's the best way to protect children in a car crash? At what age and size should a child start using a booster seat?
Don't assume you know it all when it comes to car seats for your child. Go to safercar.gov/the-right-seat and know for sure. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi there, and welcome back to the Astrology Show. I'm your host and astrologer Kelly Fox, talking about the full moon. Yes, it's that time of the month again when we have a full moon, which happens around every 28 and a half days. And this full moon is in Gemini, and it hooks into some other planets, forming some really nice, auspicious influences, I'm very pleased to report, instead of being the voice of doom and gloom sometimes. So with this Gemini full moon, just before the break, I was talking about what to expect this week with this influence. And because the Gemini full moon forms part of a grand air trine to Mars and Jupiter, there's going to be a lot of talking, which as I was saying just before the break, I noticed last night, there was a lot of talking going on, a lot, and multiple talking, because the involvement of Jupiter, which I'll cover in just a moment, but with the involvement of Jupiter with this full moon, it's very much anything that Jupiter touches, it expands or it makes bigger. And Mars, being the planet of action, just sort of like adds fuel to the fire of the nature of Gemini, but in a good way because it's a trine. So we can expect a lot of talking this week, a lot of things on our to-do list that we need to keep up with. We can be very social, full of wit and charm. And it's definitely important to make sure that you spend time in the company of others, sharing your opinions. Don't hold back. I don't mean in a bad way. I just mean speak up. Now is the time to not be a wallflower. It's the time to speak up and be heard. People will be listening. They'll be busy talking, but they'll also be listening. A lot of us, and particularly the air signs, and that's Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, will appreciate our independence more fully during this time. Gemini likes to be, Gemini is an independent sign and is a bit like a butterfly flitting from flower to flower. This time is good to schedule activities with friends instead of romantic dates at this time. What else is the Gemini full moon good for? Reading, absolutely reading, that lost art of reading. A good book. Sometimes read more than one book with this Gemini full moon because it is possible we can multitask quite well during this time. The only thing to look out for would be runaway thoughts, getting caught up with making something bigger than what it is, any sort of nervous tension. The body parts that Gemini rules are shoulders, arms, hands, and lungs. So I've mentioned throughout the show that there are other aspects involved with this full moon. Full moon is typically the moon opposite the sun. Sometimes other planets are involved. And this time we have the involvement of the moon in Gemini forming a trine to Mars in Aquarius. And a trine is a good thing. It's when two or more planets are approximately 120 degrees apart. So with the moon trine Mars, what we can expect here is a lot of energy, a lot of action. Mars is a doing sign. There's just a lot of the surge of energy. People respond quite well with this. It's like moon trine Mars is emotional power blending with physical prowess to help us feel excited, passionate about what we're doing, and internally aligned. Many of us will be able to express our emotions with ease and pay attention to our bodies. And any action taken at this time with the moon trine Mars is based on clear feelings and should be successful. With the moon trining Mars, especially in the air signs, there's a certain youthful, impetuous feeling during this time, which can be quite fun and refreshing. So sparks can fly, not just romantically, because the air signs are not as romantic as, say, the water signs or the fire signs, but sparks will fly in other ways. you might feel good this week, checking things off your to-do list, getting things done, racing from one social event to another. That's a good use of this energy. Also, part of this full moon in Gemini, it forms a trine to Jupiter in Libra. So that means that emotions swell during this full moon. So as I said before, anything that Jupiter touches, it makes bigger, it amplifies. So with moon trine Jupiter, some of us can get easily carried away with our feelings, but not as sentimental as what it could be, because the moon and Jupiter are in air signs. So air signs are very intellectual. They don't get caught up so much with emotion, and are good at intellectualizing feelings, talking about our feelings rather than feeling our feelings. Also, with this, with Jupiter hooking into the full moon, the past might seem like some utopian vision if we remember only the good and turn a blind eye toward the imperfect memories. It's not always a bad thing. But instead of getting caught in the past, this is a time to look to the future. And I'm saying that because the moon is nostalgic, and it is about our feelings, and it does sometimes, the energy of the moon can get held back or stuck previously where we've left our feelings. But now is the time to take action to move toward our future. So it's good to look ahead to the future, particularly if you're in a relationship and you're thinking long-term. Jupiter in Libra is all about relationships. The moon forming an auspicious trine to Jupiter. It's good feelings around our relationship and taking our relationships to the next level. Even if you have been in a long-term or are in a long-term relationship, there's always more levels to go. We don't usually hit the wall. There's always something we can learn continuously from our relationships. So this is a great time to visualize our dreams and goals, and as I said, thinking about our future. It will get us started on the path toward fulfillment, which is what most of us are looking for. And also with the moon in Gemini trining Jupiter in Libra, many of us are feeling really friendly, and I know I have been. And we're wanting to connect with others at this time, even family members and close friends. So that's good during the holiday season. That's sort of what we want. Although take care with self-indulgence, because, as I said, anything Jupiter touches, it expands. So try not to give in today, so you'll be paying the price later. So I keep talking about the Grand Trine, and that a Grand Trine is, if you think of a triangle, 3 or more planets at each point. They're about 120 degrees apart, the 3 planets or more. And so this particular Grand Trine involves the full moon in Gemini with Mars in Aquarius and Jupiter in Libra. And astrologers classify a Grand Trine as a major aspect or major configuration. So that's when 3 or more planets lie equal distance apart from one another, forming trines to each other and then creating a perfect triangle on the chart wheel. So if you've seen the chart wheel, and if you haven't, go to my website, theastrologer.com, and up in the menu bar, you'll see, if you click on something there called astrology, you'll see there's a chart wheel. Within that chart wheel, once you run your minimum date of birth, but preferably with a time and a place, you'll see the aspects that form your astrology chart, And you may even be lucky enough to have a Grand Trine in your chart. And a Grand Trine is this perfect triangle. But what it is, it's when 3 or more planets of the same element connect through this triangle aspect. And that's a Grand Trine. So basically, if you have 3 planets in fire, so if you've got a planet in Aries, a planet in Leo, a planet in Sagittarius, then you're more than likely going to have a Grand Trine, and that would be a Grand Fire Trine. So with our Gemini Full Moon occurring tomorrow, it ties in with Mars in Aquarius and Jupiter in Libra. So those 3 signs are all air signs, and that's why we have a Grand Air Trine with this full moon tomorrow. And it's probably one of the most auspicious aspects or influences you can have in astrology. So that's a good thing. And trines typically is when 2 or more planets are connected. They sit about 120 degrees apart. And it's considered a soft aspect, and it's beneficial to the bearer, a Grand Trine. It intensifies helpful energy. Also, Grand Trines are all about luck and opportunity, which is good news because Jupiter is part of this Grand Trine tomorrow. So, I'd think of it as like a double luck and opportunity, particularly when it comes to any sort of intellectual pursuit. So this is great news. And so it's like effortless little gifts fall into our laps when we're least expecting them. More so with the involvement of Uranus, which is a planet of the unexpected, which I'll talk about in just a moment. It's like self-sufficiency is a good thing. So Grand Trine in a chart signifies benefits that have come our way because we've earned them. And we can now enjoy them with no strings attached. That sounds pretty good. I'm going to take a short break. After the break, I will continue with the meaning of this full moon, so stay tuned.
Feed your soul with waves of consciousness on OMTimes Radio. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Have you bought into the idea that you have to work hard for your money, that business is hard? I will share some dynamic access consciousness tools to get you out of your own way so you can create a business that actually succeeds. Join me, Simone Millicers, on The Joy of Business at 4 p.m. Mondays Eastern.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive, and now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance will come in with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Hi there, welcome back to the Astrology Show. I'm your host and astrologer, Kelly Fox, talking about the wonderful full moon that we're having tomorrow. And it's not just a regular full moon where the sun and moon oppose each other with the earth in the middle. This is a really good full moon. Okay, it does intensify everything, but it's forming a Grand Air Trine, and a Grand Trine, according to astrologers, is a wonderful influence to have. Things should flow easily to us, especially for the air signs, and that's Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Now, I just mentioned the moon aspects, the Grand Trine aspects, but we also have some aspects from the sun as well, with tomorrow's full moon. And the sun is in Sagittarius, while the moon is in its opposite sign of Gemini. So the sun in Sagittarius, part of this full moon, the sun is conjuncting Saturn in Sagittarius. So we have an aspect, sun conjunct Saturn. And normally this is like, could be, depending on the sign that the sun and Saturn are in, could be quite a heavy influence. But in this case, it's not as heavy because both are in the sign of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a fairly light-hearted sign. So it's lighting things up. But normally when the sun forms a conjunction, and a conjunction means comes together next to, when the sun forms a conjunction to Saturn, it's typically a serious, there's a serious tone, something serious going on, or something long-term, or older people. Self-discipline and ambition might be peaking during this full moon. Hard work does pay off, which it does anyway, but more so under this influence. And as I've been saying, that with this Gemini influence, everybody's in a light-hearted mood, but not as much, because with the sun conjuncting Saturn, we're a little bit more serious-minded, because we've got so much to do, and it's good for sorting things out, like prioritising. Individual responsibility is key when the sun forms a conjunction to Saturn. Many of us will be more focused now than usual, self-managing and ready to tackle mundane tasks that we might ordinarily avoid. Some of us still might, because with the full moon in Gemini, we don't really want to get into the heavy, deep stuff. So that is finding the balance, as I said earlier on, between the details and the bigger picture. With the sun conjuncting Saturn, we don't want to squander our energy. So it's important that we focus and work hard and do a good job. The rewards will definitely come, but only if there's some elbow grease going on. And it's sort of also finding a balance between working with others, working by ourselves. There'll be a bit of a push-pull on that one. Any sort of business meeting you might have this week should go very well, because this is a very focused energy, because especially with the Gemini full moon, we're able to articulate our goals and formulate a plan and time frame for achieving them one step at a time. So really, I think the key word for this full moon is balance. Full moons typically are about balance, but this one in particular, especially because they're in mutable signs, the mutable signs, Gemini and Sagittarius, the other mutable signs, Virgo and Pisces, because mutable signs or mutable energy, we can be drawn or distracted very quickly, drawn away from what we're doing or distracted very easily. So it is really about finding a balance, not getting too off the beaten path to what we're really doing. But the Sun-Saturn conjunction helps us to be practical and really focused. We might even have some profound realizations during this full moon, particularly because it's in an intellectual sign. So with this Sun-Saturn conjunction, we can focus on staying grounded and aware. But try not to feel too pessimistic or cynical. That's that's the shadow of this Sun-Saturn conjunction, part of the full moon. The other aspect that the Sun in Sagittarius is making is a trine to Uranus in Aries. That's wonderful. It's wonderful because it's a trine, and a trine is known as a soft aspect, and it's ease. It just means ease. Things come easily. So this is good. I like this aspect, Sun trine Uranus, particularly in fire signs. That's great news. because there's a lot of action. Fire signs, if you think of the element of fire, is always on the go, always moving. So under this influence of the Sun trine Uranus, we're going to feel up for anything new. A lot of cutting edge, forward thinking, long-lasting because of the involvement of Saturn, so that's good. Ideas can come to fruition because of the involvement of Saturn with this Sun trine Uranus aspect. It's a great time for creative intellectual processes in group settings, good ideas, spawning good ideas. Definitely pay attention to flashes of inspiration that you receive now, because a lot of them might be more important than what we realize. Like a new solution to an old problem could be in the headlines today, or an idea or invention so innovative and perfect that it will capture the world's attention. That's interesting. So let's watch the headlines and see what's there. It might be bigger than what we realize. New perceptions are opened and visionaries take center stage. So let's capitalize on this, anything about the future and thinking ahead. The other aspects involved, yes, there's still more. Moon opposite Saturn, so that grounds our feelings. Try not to get caught up in the criticism or the pessimism of that. And Moon sextile Uranus just supports what I said with the Sun trine Uranus. It's all about new adventures, trying new things, being up for an adventure. Don't say no, say yes. Also, Sun sextile Mars. It's all about energy and taking action. So it's putting these brilliant, innovative plans that we have at this time and actually putting them into action. As well as the Sun forming a sextile to Jupiter. This is an aspect of promising luck and good fortune, confidence and optimism. That sounds pretty good. So that's the full moon. It's pretty involved, that's for sure. Now on to your weekly horoscope. So after all of that, if you're an Aries, keep your message clear and focused this week. Remember that non-verbal communication is important too, so watch your body language. With social media, be careful that your words aren't misinterpreted accidentally or deliberately. If you're a Taurus, look at how much you've achieved in 2016. Even if you think you've struggled, you're still here and you've survived. Pick up your own accomplishments and cement your self-esteem, but don't put others down along the way. If you're a Gemini, emotions are closer to the surface than normal with the full moon in your sign. Don't be afraid or ashamed to cry or to mourn for opportunities lost. Come to terms with the past so that you can embrace the wonderful future which lies ahead. If you're a Cancer, dream, meditate, relax. The full moon encourages a reflective focus. Learn from your mistakes, but also congratulate yourself for how far you have come. It's not your most sociable moon, but quiet get-togethers will be rewarding. If you're a Leo, make a point of thanking those who have helped you. Take a group of friends out for a meal or send flowers to someone who put you first when they didn't have to. You have a strong supportive network around you. That's something to celebrate. If you're a Virgo, changing your mind about your career path, it's never too late to try something new. If your job doesn't bring you pride and emotional satisfaction, consider switching to something which does, even if that means a lower income for a while. If you're a Libra, listen to your inner calling. Spiritually, there are many opportunities for growth. Follow your instincts to learn more about yourself and about the valuable work you are here to do. Don't hesitate to sign up for a course of study. If you're a Scorpio, release grudges and offer forgiveness. You've held on to a hurt for far too long, but now is the time to wipe the slate clean for your own sake. Send blessings to those who have wounded you and take back your power by refusing to dwell on this any longer. If you're a Sagittarius, intense full moon emotions mean a potentially bumpy ride for a relationship, but only because your connection together is meaningful. Work on compromise and learn to value the love you have and the stories you share. If you're a Capricorn, you either need more order in your life or more chaos. You'll know which. The full moon encourages you to shake things up or to calm things down, depending on your situation. What you mustn't do is to allow things to keep moving ahead as they are. If you're an Aquarius, passions run high, crazy dates, impulsive flings, a new relationship, or a torrid affair. Which of these is on your agenda? Right now, you enjoy taking risks and raising eyebrows. Just one thing. Who will clear up the mess afterwards? And finally, if you're a sweet Pisces, your work-life balance leaves a lot to be desired, and the full moon may prompt a crisis. Stay calm and choose with your heart. You can have it all, but not until you've thought it through very carefully and in conjunction with your family, of course. So that's your weekly horoscope for this week, with the main theme of the week being the full moon in Gemini, which is all part of a grand air trine, which brings wonderful opportunities and putting plans into action. Thanks for joining me. I'm your host and astrologer, Kelly Fox, wishing you a wonderful week ahead.